right, I'm just going to get going. We've only got 1 minute. I don't imagine there's going to be a slew of people popping in the next minute or so. We may get a couple more joining. How is everyone doing so far? I know some may be part of my progressive training program right now. Others are not, some may be new to the system or sub-users. So how is everyone working in their system? Like, how are they making out? Are they finding success in their system? Are they coming up with same, problems or scenarios that they're encountering when it comes to their lead? Any issues you're facing with, the functionality, anything like that? Does anyone have anything that they wish to comment or enlighten on? Any success stories, any funny stories, anything like that? Such a chatty group today, my goodness. So until I hear otherwise or get a question from you guys, I'm just going to go over some of the basics in here that will ultimately help you in your system. And a lot of it you guys may have heard, but really I've got to embed it into your heads when you're making these calls or working your database, because it'll always come up, needless to say. So going into your system. So the number one thing, and I bet you Brana is one of our trainers and she's on here as well, and I bet you she can agree, is the number one thing that when we're doing any kind of retrain or what have you with somebody that's been using our system is the lack of information being logged in the system. So whether it's, call notes, tagging, things like that are really going to help you manage and leverage those leads within your system. So calling and logging your calls essentially in the CRM system is going to be fundamental to your overall success. If we're trying to remember when we last tried to call someone or when we last spoke to somebody, it's going to fail 100%. Our brains aren't at that capacity where we can remember everything. And ultimately what will happen is you'll have leads slip through the crack, which could have eventually possibly been a deal or a positive outcome for yourself. So there's two methods of logging your calls in here. Now, the first method of logging your call would be to essentially click on your lead's phone number. This is going to be using the dialer. So when you're using the dialer in the system, I always kind of push for that AgentLocator does not gain any kind of benefit from you using the dialer whatsoever. It's 100% for your benefit. Now, I know some of you have had issues with the sound quality, things like that. I always encourage you, go to support. They will help try to troubleshoot what the issue is as to why the dialer, its sound quality or cutting in and out, why that might be happening to help it so it's a little bit more streamlined for you. So when you're using the dialer, the best and my favorite aspect in here is that it's going to automatically log everything for you, but at the same time, it's going to speed up your call ratio. So many of you guys are busy these days, especially if you have buyers or listings on the go. It's chaotic, right? So when it comes to working your leads, you don't want to neglect your leads, but you also don't have an abundance of time to be working them on a day-to-day basis for many of you. So the dialer will actually speed up your call rate by at least 30 seconds a call, especially when you're calling the leads that you've already tried to call. So after that first call attempt, essentially. So when you're using the dialer, you're always going to have the lead's phone number and their name right in front of you. We've all done it before where we're calling anyone. Doesn't even matter. It could be calling a friend and we're like, who am I calling? I totally forget who I'm calling right now. So it's right in front of your face. Their name is there. Their phone number is there. It's also going to display your Twilio phone number. Personally, I hand out my Twilio number. So if you're ever, any of you guys are getting a voicemail from me or I'm shooting you a text or doing any of that, it is all done through Twilio. because at the end of the day, I want to make sure all of that information is logged and recorded. Now, the true benefit for you guys as well with being so busy right now is that incoming call. So if we're calling, we're talking to somebody, we're giving them this number out, and they call you at a time where you're not at your desk, you're on the go, you're out on showings or in between showings, or even just sitting down with the family for a change, that inbound call is also going to be logged and recorded in the CRM system. So when they call back, it's directing it to your cell phone. So your cell phone will ring no differently than somebody that has your direct line, but they'll get your voicemail if you don't answer. So, but if you talk, that call is being logged and recorded. So essentially, if you can have a full-blown conversation with one of your leads in the system while sitting in traffic, for example, and knowing that that call is going to be logged in the system and recorded. So when you get back to your desk, you can go back and listen to that call and make any adjustments or tweaks or notes that you need to on the account. So that's a true advantage there. And primarily why I use that as well. So, and again, going back to the fact that it's automatically going to log the calls, right? So whenever you have that dialer up, you have the call results, right? So it's just making sure you log the appropriate call results in here, and you do have that note section in here, and always leaving detailed notes for yourself, right? Often enough, I'll see like a 1-sentence note in a 10-minute conversation. There is clearly a lot more that happened and was said in that 10-minute conversation than a one-sentence comment or call note on that individual. So I always say leave your note as if it's for somebody else, not for yourself. Now, if you are logging your calls this way under the notes and call section because you want to, you're connected to your phone, or you don't want to incur any additional costs, everyone to their own, it's just going in and logging that as a call. So if we put a note on a campaign or on a lead, that's exactly all it is a note. It's like me throwing a sticky note on the computer. I can't search for that unless I visually see it. And the system can't account a note as being a call that you last called someone. So there's no filter in there saying when the last note was created on the lead, as well as we do have system notes as well as personal notes in here. So it's always remembering to log your calls as calls in here. You can backdate. So if you're going back into your system and you're doing some cleanup, you can always go back and change the timestamp. So if you called this lead, back in March, you may not know the exact time that you called them, but you can go back and still log that call result in here. So what's great is when you're logging call results, and I'm just going to push this back. When you're logging call results in here, it's going to be connected to the phone validity, the lead stats, and the pipeline. These are 3 fields that you can filter your leads by, okay? So again, the more you log in here, the more filters you can actually take advantage of to create those audiences. So if we talk to the lead, what's happening is we've now got a phone number that indicates that it's valid, and this moved back to made contact because now I've made contact with that lead, right? So everything's just a little bit connected. So always making sure you log your calls just mentally, but that's where using the dialer is going to speed up that call process, because you literally have your lead navigation up here and you're able to hop from lead to lead, speeding up that call. So essentially, if you're calling every lead and letting it ring for 23 to 25 seconds, then what ends up happening is you called 3 leads if none of them answered within a minute and a half. So this is, again, where you're going to start to see I'm able to jump in, have more conversations with these leads in less amount of time. So that's, one of the fundamental aspects in there. So Andrew Irani is asking, what if they try to call back that number? So we did go over that, but I'll repeat that. So if they call back your Twilio number, it's redirected to your cell phone number. So in your user profile, up under your user preferences, essentially, the number that Twilio will basically transfer any inbound communication to is the cell phone number that you have listed here. Okay, so always make sure you have a cell phone number in there that can receive text messages or a VoIP phone of some sort. I've had some people put their office line in there. I'm like, you don't want to put your office line in there. The office is getting a bunch of calls from your leads, which they could be very well handing off to another agent. So always have your cell phone in there, or if you have somebody working your leads, put their cell phone number in there. That way they're getting the inbound calls as they're making the calls out. Or sending text messages out, things like that. And this you can change daily if you had to, if you're switching things around in there. So hopefully that answers your question there, Andrew. Now, when we go into our leads, it's really about organizing and understanding when we last try to call someone so we know when to action that again. And as many of you guys know, when you're calling your leads, they're not always going to answer, right? But we can't hold it against them if they don't answer, because I can guarantee you that if I pulled up every one of your guys' account, there's calls on there that you guys didn't answer, right? So we hold an expectation of what we want the perfect lead to be, but it's an expectation that we can't even carry for ourselves or honor ourselves, right? It's just unrealistic to think badly of someone because they don't answer the phone. And really, it comes down to a lot of, can you blame them? Like my phone rings all the time and it's stupid robotic messages from, you know, my SIM card's been compromised, whatever, right? I take the time to answer it. So people get a lot of nonsense calls. So the key to kind of pushing past that is going to be your continuous attempts to call a lead. They're going to start to recognize your phone number instead of those scam alert things that come through. They're only calling you one time, and that's it from that number. They're using those numbers and tossing them and switching. They're recycling numbers all the time, whereas you're consistently calling from the same number. People will start to recognize that phone number, and many will get curious as to that. So Nikki, you're asking me to maximize my screen. It's not my screen, hon, it's yours. You got to maximize your screen. Does everyone else see this okay? Like, is it really small for everyone, or is it like normal? All right. Perfect. So this is where your save filters come in. So I really push save filters. Filters are going to become your best friend, and you're going to wonder where your life has been until then. It really helps to simplify and take a lot out of your head and actually put it to action. So we all do it, you know, in our day-to-day lives, whether it's work related, you know, home related, whatever it is. Instead of writing things down, we try to keep them in our heads. And it makes us feel way more overwhelmed and busier than we actually are, because we've always got this thing playing in the back of our mind of, well, everything that we need to be doing. So take advantage of calendars 100%. I push that on anyone, like start using a calendar for stuff like reminding appointments, things like that. It takes it out of your head and puts it somewhere so you don't have to keep thinking about it. You know that it's taken care of. So you're not actioning that full thing all at once, but you know you've taken place, you know, in there. So what did you say? So it's showing all, I think you're saying it's only showing only on the middle with top and bottom with lots of black screen. So there's an option at the top where you have your view options in there. There should be a little toolbar that says view options. Just play around with those and then make sure you're on full screen. And you can sometimes, if there's a black, there's often a little bar that you can pull over to eliminate that black. It could have been a previous webinar maybe that you were on that you had certain settings. I don't know if everyone, I don't think no one else has said that they had that same issue. So it might just be the settings that you're viewing in. So that goes into your save filters, where again, we talk about these all the time, and it's really going to keep you on top of the leads, takes the guessing game out of what you got to do. right? So many of you guys will have at least number 1 and 2 in your system. Some of you guys will have 3. Some of you guys will have all of these, including the check-ins. So it just really depends on where you're at in the program and what kind of training you've had, or if you've responded to my one email, we're doing progressive training, or you've asked your current trainer to help create additional filters for you. So if you need the additional filters for check-ins, and we'll quickly run through those afterward, your assigned trainer is more than capable of walking through that with you. Now, a lot of the times in the trainings that I do, it's tiered training. It's like 2 to 3 30-minute training sessions. So instead of throwing everything at you guys all at once, we do it in sections. That way you're kind of wrapping your head around it, you're actioning, and then you're progressively seeing the changes happen. So where you guys essentially want to start your day is in this number 1 new lead. I see many of you guys going into the global filters, just pretend they don't exist. Like they just don't exist. When we're creating new filters, they're always going to be in the company filters. Company filters just essentially mean any user within your business can use the filter. If it's a personal filter like this means that if I have another user account in my system, another agent, for example, they don't get to see my personal filters. Okay, so you can save filters as personal or company when you're saving them. So the number 1 new lead, 0 calls logged. This essentially for you guys is pulling up every single lead where you have 0 calls logged on them. So you can see here on the right-hand side in the last contact, all these leads have no calls logged on them, okay? The phone validity on these leads, we've indicated that we only want to see leads where we know we have a valid phone number or it is unknown at this point, meaning we haven't really tried, we haven't connected with that person to verify if it's valid or not, but we're not including bad numbers or known bad numbers in this list. And then finally, the pipeline on these leads are for ones that we have not made contact with or moved any further through the pipeline. So they're on not set new lead or tried to contact, right? So 85 leads in here. Your goal is to have this empty all the time, essentially. If you have something like 85 leads in here, call 15 to 25 a day. Don't look at 85 and be like, oh my God, I gotta call 85 people. Call 15 to 20 a day. 30 at max, depends on how many leads you have in your system and how much time you plan on spending daily within your leads. So when you open up the first lead, essentially, you're brought to this screen. Now, if I call this lead and I can kind of go through and go through the motions of calling this lead, so you just click on that green button, it starts the timer, lets us know it's connected. Then when we're done having our conversation, or maybe they didn't answer, we're going to hang that call up. And before we save and continue, we're going to log our call results. So let's just move this to talk to lead, and then we're going to save and continue. So one thing that you'll notice is we've got 85 leads in here. So now as I move to test 1, you're going to notice that we've now only got 84 leads in here, because that one person that we just technically called no longer matches this qualifier of number of calls being 0, because we've now logged a call, but they also don't match either of these because we potentially talked to the lead, which means we've got a valid number, and 2, we made contact because we talked to the lead. So they don't actually match any of these qualifiers, and so they've now fallen off of this list, right? So going through this list, you can let the first call, depending on the magnitude of calls that you have, you can let the first call hit voicemail or do the 23 to 25 second rule. You let it ring. Like if you've got to make a ton of calls in your system because you just got so many leads in here, do the 23 to 25 second rule. They don't answer within 25 seconds. You're hanging up and you're moving on to the next lead. All right. Does this all make sense to everyone that's watching? So I'm just allowing some people to talk that are just recently joined in here. I might be taking the allow to talk off some of you because it keeps moving on me. All right, I think everyone can talk if they want to. So again, if you want to talk, just raise your hand or what have you. But essentially, that's your first filter. So if you guys go in here and you've got like 300 leads in here, you're definitely, that's overwhelming. I use the analogy of a closet. You open the closet, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to clean this closet, but not today. Shut the door. Right? So it's a big task. Whereas if we take it in bite-sized pieces, it's like, okay, I'm going to open up the closet today, but I'm only going to clean the bottom shelf. That's it today. Or I'm only going to organize the blankets today. I'm not touching anything else or whatever's in that closet, right? So taking it in bite-sized portions is beneficial. So if you have a significant list in here, what I urge you to do is add the filter item of last activity. So this, and you can do it at 30 days or 60 days, your discretion as to how many people are on your list. But if the last activity, and then you go all leads within the last number of days, and you can go 30 or 60. So if I was to go 30 on here and apply that filter, there's no one, because there's still no one. These are all old leads apparently. So it doesn't work in my case, but for your case, it will work. And then that will help shorten that list for you. So if you add this on here, you can click update. It's going to save it with this filter for next time. And then basically, once you get to the point where there's 0 leads, then you just start increasing that number to gradually start showing you older and older leads, in addition to any new leads that you're generating. So that's your first filter. So as you guys know, when we're calling, they're not answering every single time, right? And that's okay. Everyone has different schedules and different motivations and, you know, different lifestyles. So we have to accept that they may just not be ready to have a conversation nonetheless. But what we're going to do is go up to your save filter. And after you've called leads in your number 1 filter, you're going to go and call your number 2 filter. So the number 2 filter will essentially have all your leads where they have 8 or less calls. Some of them might say 7 for you, but 8 or 7 less calls on the lead, nonetheless. Same rules with respect to your phone validity. And then we are not going to call this lead every single day. We're going to call these leads every other day. So they haven't been contacted by phone in the last 2 days. Now, in this list, you can see I flipped it. So basically, when you guys come in here, if you still have leads in your number 1 filter, so if there's still leads sitting in here, only do you need to do this. If your number 1 is empty, you don't need to do this next step, okay? So if you're in here and you still have leads in your number 1, you're gonna go over to here and you're gonna switch it to last contact call. What this does is it's taking this list and putting the people where there's already been a call attempt at the top of the list, okay? Because this list will have people that are in your number 1 list as well because they haven't been contacted in the last 2 days. So in this list here, what you would do is you're gonna call everyone that you've already got a call logged on them for, okay? So in this case, it would be 5 leads, basically 5 leads in here that haven't been called. So you would open the first lead, and this second, third, fifth, 7th call, we are doing that 23 to 25 second rule. When we click on the number we call, we're going to let it, it's not going to work because it's a bad number, but we're going to let it ring for 23 to 25 seconds. And if they don't answer, that's when we're hanging out. So if we call, this one won't work either because, oh, it's got the express consent. There we go. So we would go dial lead, then we dial, let it ring 23, 25 at most, hang up if there's no answer, click on the next lead, okay? So that's what you would do for the leads in your number 2 filter. Going forward, so at the end of the day, when you guys are doing this, if you're playing catch up, you're going to be heavy calls for the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you. You're going to have, you know, a little bit of work because now you're playing clean up and tidy up and catch up. All right. So that's why I said only call about 15 to 20, 30 at the very most, depending on how much time you're going to plan on spending in here daily, because it's going to be compounding. So essentially what happens in here is if I call this lead today, this lead would fall off of this list and then automatically reappear on Saturday for me to try again. And if I call on Saturday and she still doesn't answer, she's going to reappear again on Monday for me to try again. So that's where the call logging, the system's going to keep spitting out who you have to keep calling and trying to call. And again, the consistency, you just keeping up with that will, you'll gain the success that way of somebody eventually answering the phone. And make sure you're changing your times that you call. So I know some people, I talk to, they're like, yeah, in the morning, I usually do all my calls. Well, split it up sometimes when you can, because some people, you'll never get them on the call, on the phone in the morning, ever. You'll never get them on the phone because it doesn't match with their daily routine and what they do. Some people cannot answer the call while they're at work, right? Think about, doctors, for example. If they're a doctor, they're not going to answer your call in the morning. You're going to catch them when they're off hours, but they're also shift workers, too many of them, right? So you got to switch up your call times to kind of coincide with any possible availability that could be for your leads. And often the time they register, you can look at that as kind of a resource for yourself and an indication that, yes, people are actively doing things at all different times of the day. So we can't just limit our calls to one specific time of the day. So that's your second filter. You're then going into your made contact filter. So the made contact filter, and you guys can add as many in here, but you basically, anyone that you may have made contact or moved further through the pipeline where their activity was within the last 30 days. Now I have this additional, this is in our tiered training and progressive training, so you don't necessarily have to pay attention to that right yet. But essentially, these are the leads that we've made contact with that have been active. So with these leads, if you guys have leads in here, you want to make sure this list is organized for yourself. So making sure you have tags on your lead. Anytime you have a conversation with a lead, at the very least, you should be able to add 1 to 3 tags to them. So the tags are, again, those little indicators for yourself as to who somebody is or their situation. Right, so it just allows you to even create filters based on, if I want to pull up all my leads that have an agent, for example, I can do so within seconds because they have this tag on them. So it really helps you to organize them. So for any of you that are watching in your made contact list, your homework in this list is going to be going through your leads. If you haven't called the ones that you've made contact with, because maybe you've only made contact by SMS, you're going to call them. Now, when we are talking to the lead, the primary information that we need to gain is the when and the why. The when being, one of the most fundamental aspects of their home search, because you need to know when they plan on actioning their criteria. So again, a lot of times I'll jump into a system and all the notes are all about criteria. Well, that's great that you know what they're looking to buy, but when are they looking to buy it? That's what's going to make the difference for you guys, is knowing when they plan on moving so you know how to follow up with them. And the why they're moving or their situation is going to allow you to determine how you should be educating or what information you should be offering this person, right? So the information you go to offer a first-time buyer is going to be a lot different than any information you may be, looking to offer to an investor or somebody that's looking to retire or downsize, right? So finding that information, we really have to add value to our follow-ups and to our conversations, and it'll allow you to stand out against the competition. So keeping in mind that many of these leads are going to be in multiple dashboards. They're not always, just in your dashboard. People go search crazy. They try to find what they're looking for and they go all over the place to look and find what they're looking for, right? So consider yourself when you're trying to find something. You go often, not always, to multiple different spots online or in person to try to find that thing that you're looking for. So leads are doing the same. So it's not uncommon that your leads are in multiple dashboards. It's you have to stand apart from the competition. You have to add true value and really focus on that customer service, because that's what's going to engage that lead and drop their walls and build the relationship. You're now offering them guidance and assistance and educating them in a way that no one ever bothered to take the time to do it. So with these leads, you're cleaning them up, and then you're going to create your check-in tags. Okay, so the check-in tags are really going to help you stay on top of these leads without having to remember, for the most part. So it makes it a little bit easier. So however you call it, some like I do the C for the communication. Sometimes depends on your tag list. I will add them just with an asterisk, for example. So one week check-ins, for example, and then you pick your color, and I'd make them all the same color. So if you put an asterisk, in this case, where did it go? It's up here. I have numbers and stuff instead. But in this case, because I have the asterisk, and for most of you, because you have the asterisk, it'll show up at the top of your list. So there's 5 different ones that you would create, I think. So you would do the weekly check-ins, basically. So weekly check-in is somebody that's hot to trot. They are planning a move between now and the next 3 months. So any renter, if you guys are doing tenant lead generation, those are going to be a weekly check-in. Somebody that's also planning a move in the next few months, or buy or sell in the next few months, are weekly check-ins as well. You then have your 2-week check-ins. So these are people that are, tend to be somewhere between like the 3 to 5 month mark. They're hot to trot, but not quite there yet. So we're going to call them every couple of weeks, and the 2-week check-in is actually 17 days, so it's smack between 2 and 3 weeks. You're then going to have your monthly check-ins. So monthly check-ins are going to be people that are anywhere from, I'm going to say 6 to 12 months out, somewhere in there. You're checking in on them monthly. And then you're going to have quarterly check-ins, wherever that one is, for quarterly check-ins. So quarterly check-ins are people that are tending to transact within the next year to year and a half. And then a 6-month check-in. 6-month check-ins are people that are a year and a half plus out, or they have indicated that there's no intention on moving. They're just like tire kicking, basically. So those would also be 6 months. Some of you may want to create a 1-year check-in as well. 1-year check-ins are great for your clients because you can automatically just put that check-in tag on them. And every year, like after you sold, their close date, they mark them as sold, it's done deal. You put the 1-year check-in, it just they fall into a list for you to follow with every year, that sort of thing. So those are the check-in tags. So every time you call a lead, you're going to add a check-in tag to them, right? Based on those timelines, use your discretion. If whatever they tell you, if you ask a lead when to follow up with them next and they say 6 months, you're putting a quarterly check-in on. You're going to cut that in half, whatever they tell you. They're not going to remember that they told you to call them in 6 months. You said, hey, you asked me to give a call in a few months. Here I am, blah, 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 right? So that is the check-in tag. So all of these leads here, and I'll just create the 1-week call on this lead just so that you guys can see it. And she fell off the list now. So she fell off the list because we have this additional filter, okay? So the reason why we have this filter on here where we're now excluding anyone with a check-in tag is because those check-in tags, those leads all fall into their own filter now because of check-ins. So what this ultimately will do for you is it basically leaves your made contact filter to only show you leads that you've made contact with, but you've yet to get enough information to determine how you should be following up with them. So there's no, you don't have a check-in tag on them. So this list for you guys, as you start doing this, will get smaller and smaller because you are going to start having people in your check-in filters. So the check-in filters are very straightforward when you have them in here. So you're going to have basically you use the asterisk. So if you look at my drop down here, I progressively add asterisk. So for your 1 and 2, you're using 1 asterisk. For your monthly and quarterly, you're using 2 asterisks. And then for the 6 months, you're using 3. This will put it in that order, okay? Now, with this check-in, we're basically taking anyone with a tag, we're moving this to any, and then the one-way check-in call. We are then going to have the filter was not contacted. And for many of you, you can use phone and SMS. And it's all, and I'll just add this so you can see me add it in here. It's all leads within the last number of days being 7. Okay. So there's 10 people in here right now. So the minute I call Adna or send Adna a message, she's going to fall off of this list and she'll automatically be here in 7 days from now. Same with this one. If I call this one today, she'll fall off, reappear 7 days later. So it takes the guesswork out of what you need to do. You just have to go through your filters and reach out to the people that are in those filters, needless to say. So your 2-week check-ins, as I mentioned, is 17 days. And you can change this to 14 days if you want to, entirely up to you. I just did it so that it's kind of right smack between 2 and 3 weeks. So it gives a little bit of a grace period, needless to say. But same idea, if we call Anya and, you know, whether we talk to Anya or not, she's going to fall off of here and she's going to automatically reappear 17 days later. So when we're doing our check-ins, again, we're focusing on our customer service, right? So the byproduct of being great at customer service is going to be the sale, hands down. Right. So if we focus on the service versus the sale, you're gonna see your leads are going to be a lot more accepting to your calls. You're not trying to pressure them or, you know, seem eager beaver to get the deal done. So when you're calling and you're leaving a voicemail, you can even let them know they don't have to call you back, that you're just checking in. Right. Hey, Anya, you don't have to call me back. Just wanted to follow up, make sure all the listings you're receiving are still going great. If there's any questions about the homes you've received this week or last, let me know. I can be reached easily by phone or text anytime. Right. So it's just letting them know you're there, right? Without pushing the sale. You'll know as you know you're progressing through the leads, as you're getting closer, when you need to start pushing to some sort of an appointment, you know, one way or another. So the key with these as well is you'll start to get very familiar with the check-ins because it'll become habit. It's making it a habit of throwing it on there. So somebody that is basically starting off at a 6-month check-in, for example, there's no one in here, but if they were a 6-month check-in, then as you do the first check-in, you may need to remove that 6-month check-in tag and then put them on the quarterly check-in or the monthly. Just depends on how their situation's changed in the last 6 months, right? So it's just being mindful of that. If you forget to remove a tag from somebody, it doesn't matter because they'll still follow up. That's why we use the any. They'll still fall into the correct category when they need to, needless to say. But it's just making sure you're adjusting those. So for any of you guys that are watching, if you do have an assigned trainer, as I mentioned, they are more than capable of helping you create these check-in filters if you need to. I also have a documentation that I forgot I created a little while back, which I'll actually send in the group here. So just give me 1 second here, because we did cover this back in February, I believe it was. So let me just pull it up and I'm going to put it in the chat for you guys. It really goes over creating the filters, the check-ins and what have you. So let me just do this. And come you. There we go. So it is going to be in the chat right there. So that's a Google Doc right there. So this, and I'll just bring it over so you can see or not. Come on. There we go. So this is all like basically, so setting up your filter and tags. So there's a quick follow-up on the check-in and tags. There's a quick tutorial on saving filters, and a quick tutorial on using your save filters as well. So they go through the number one, basically going through those there and kind of showing you how to set up those initial filters if you want to, and then the check-in filters as well. They're all in there. So if you guys want to give it a go, and expand your knowledge a little bit in the system. Now I do have another filter in here that we didn't really discuss. It's the need to make contact 8+ calls. So a lot of people will ask, well, what do I do after the 8th call? Right? What happens to those leads? So those leads essentially, do I have one in here? Yeah. So those leads essentially, they go to the bottom of your priority list. Okay, so you've already tried calling them at least 8 times and still no success. So you're just simply going to scale back your call attempts on those people. So essentially what you're doing is you're going to call them every 7 days, so once a week, but only if they've been active in the last 30 days. That's it. So once you've exhausted, because again, they're at the bottom of the priority list at that point. If you're actually looking at the people at the bottom of your barrel of priorities, it's the ones that are not active in the last 30 days, essentially, that you've already exhausted your 8 or more calls on them. They are like I've got so much time on my hands today, I'm going to try to call everyone. That's what that list is, okay? So they're the ones that have just, they're not the main concern for yourself at that point. Now, does anyone have questions about these filters? I know I gave you that document in the chat there that you guys can review those tutorials to kind of walk through that again. Does anyone have questions surrounding the filters, the logging of information, using Twilio, any of that that's going to help you succeed in this with the filters and using those filters? And I can guarantee you, if you have a question, you're not the only one that has that same question. Wow, you guys are such a quiet group today. Quiet group today. That's okay. It's Thursday. Most of you guys are in Ontario. Are you guys getting sick of your lockdown yet? I can imagine that's taken a toll on many people for sure. So those are the filters that are really, and that's the fundamental aspect is, essentially calling and logging your calls. The system will tell you who to call and so on and so forth. Now I just want to see who's in here, and I can't remember who it was because I know yesterday someone had asked about campaigns, and I mentioned it's on this. Not too sure who it was. Does everyone in here have an understanding as to campaigns and how to use campaigns? Because I know we kind of briefly touch on that from time to time or session to session as someone has a question. So you guys don't have to talk if you don't want to. You can use the chat. Some people like to be able to discuss and be part of the discussion. And, sometimes it's easier to talk than as I put text, a question and things like that. Okay, so Julie's saying she's not very familiar with the campaigns and when to use them. All right. So there's really no campaigns in your system. Some of you guys are going to see legacy campaigns. So when you open up a lead and you go to the campaign section here, when you go to a selected campaign, you're going to see some legacy campaigns. Okay, these are very old campaigns. I don't suggest using them, but everyone to their own, 100%. You can recreate those campaigns because if you can see the campaigns in here, you also have all the emails in here associated with that campaign to build it out again. So anytime we're using a campaign, it really should complement your efforts, not replace your efforts. All right. So unless you got a ton of money that you're just blowing and you're just kind of throwing money at this and, you know, dealing with whatever comes from it, then all the power to you. A lot of individuals don't have money to just blow and hope for the best that way. So what you're going to do is build campaigns to help you piggyback any personal attempts that you're doing. Again, they shouldn't replace your attempts. They should just kind of assist you with whatever it is that you're doing. So when you go to build a campaign, there's two things that you're going to want to do first. That's going to make it a little easier for yourself is one, building out email templates, and two, building out SMS templates. Now, if you go to the email section, up at the top right-hand corner here, you're going to notice that there's all videos here that relate to this section. So if you need to learn how to email, like edit your email signature, create a template, they're all in here. But basically you toggle, you create new, you can put in the category. So when you're in the email template area, when you drop down this category, many of you may already see the default buyers campaign. These are all the buyer emails that are in there. Go and edit them 100%. Go and edit them. Do not use them as is. You want these emails coming across as how you would want to come across to a lead and communicate with the lead, not how these emails do. Trust me. They're just, you know, a lot of them have the bones essentially, but we need to just put some meat on those bones. Let's put it that way. So tweaked, definitely. So you do have that opportunity to edit those. And then same with the SMS. So when you get into the SMS templates area, you'll have a video here on how to create SMS templates. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just going to help you speed up that process. It's just going to speed up your process when creating your campaign. Yeah, so Jill is saying she knows temp's not great. She was changing them every time, didn't realize that she can edit. Oh, that's good. So now, yeah, you can permanently edit. So you don't have to tweak it every single time. So when you go to build out a campaign, what you're going to do is you just go to the campaign template editor. So for many of you guys, especially if you're running lead generation, you're going to find, let's just see in your system, there's so many, you're going to see like a lead qualification campaign. Okay, so something like that, if you're on lead generation or new lead campaign, it's usually called this, but essentially. So if you already have that for the buyer leads coming in, you can simply just edit this campaign and start adding to it or editing the messages that are going out, things like that. So you can just go in and edit. Most of you should have an initial message that goes out, which is basically the opt-in, opt-out message that's required by carrier companies. I do not encourage you removing that because what will ultimately happen is you could potentially get all your messages starting to go into everyone's, or it starts getting blocked by the carriers, basically. You'll notice all your messages failing. So we finally got over some hurdles with Twilio to slow that down, needless to say, and cooperating with the carrier companies. So you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and remove that. And you'll notice so many of your messages will fail because carriers will block them. So you can essentially build out this campaign. So if you already have a campaign here, but let's say in between these two messages, you wanted to add an email, for example, you could go and click that plus sign and throw an email in there. All right, so you can do it that way. You can also, of course, add things in here. So I'm going to go through as if I'm creating a campaign versus just editing, because it's going to be applicable even if you're creating a campaign. So it just kind of goes from step one. So you basically just go create new when you're in the campaign section. You are going to give it a name. So let's call it Crystal Campaign. You're going to choose the execution type in here. The execution type, thanks, Brian, I will see you after. The execution type, you have two options, the relative date or a fixed date. So relative is relative to when that lead is assigned to the campaign. A fixed date means that it's a fixed date for that action or this campaign. Like every action has a fixed date to it. So how you can relate to that, a fixed date could potentially be a holiday campaign where certain holidays always fall on the same day. So the emails just naturally go out. So you can build out the remaining of 2021 holiday campaign based on this year's holiday dates, or you can build out one that also includes 2022. So it's kind of going and including all those emails, that sort of thing. You will have stopping clauses. So stopping clauses are here that essentially will automatically stop the campaign for you if certain actions are met. So for example, if you apply a specific tag to a lead, or if you reach a certain pipeline status. So if the goal of your campaign is perhaps to gain contact with the lead, because maybe you have yet to make contact, one of your stopping clauses would potentially be, the pipeline moving from, that sort of, from a tried to contact to something else. That would just automatically stop the campaign. Depending on how you're building your campaign, you can put stopping clauses on the entire campaign, or you can put stopping clauses on individual actions as well. So I always say pick one or the other. You have one ultimate stopping clause, but each action also may have its own individual stopping clause. So I tend to leave those empty personally when I'm building, unless I know that they're all very consistent. Same with the silent hours. So if you're building a campaign that is just like all text messages, for example, you're definitely going to put silent hours on the entire campaign. This is just between what hour and what hour are these messages not going to go out. So if the lead registers at 12 in the morning, we don't want the message to go out then, or the campaign to start. We don't want all our messages to be sent to this person at midnight every single day, kind of thing, right? So we would want it to be a more reasonable, like working hours, that sort of thing. So you just select the time, latest time at night, you would want a message to go out, and then the earliest in the morning. So basically, if I was to do this, well, this would be 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., just hypothetically. Any lead that came in at 12:01 in the morning would not get a text message until 12 in the afternoon the next day, okay? Just as an example there. So once you do that, you would save it. Now, one cool thing as well is you can clone campaigns. So if you're wanting to create campaigns that are fairly similar, so maybe you have like a buyer campaign and a first-time buyer campaign that you're creating, they're going to be similar, but the first-time buyer may have additional emails or communications that you want to add that would be beneficial to a first-time buyer. So you could essentially clone one of them and then modify it, so you're not having to rebuild the whole campaign again. The bones of it is there, you're just tweaking it. But nonetheless, we will just save this one here. And then you have your campaign has been started. So all you're going to do is click the plus sign and you're choosing what your action is. So let's pretend our first action is an SMS. This is where the templates come in handy, because you can build your SMSs here, but if there's any error with your short code, it is not going to work. I'll tell you that much. So it's always better to have the templates to save yourself that issue. So basically I can, let's just see, there we go. So here's like the short code that I created for this. It's got all that. That's just a text that was saved. So that's the content there. You can choose who it's coming from. In this case, it's just the main agent. And this is where I can put an automatic stopping clause on this specific action if I want to, which means it'll just skip over this action if I don't have stopping clauses on the main level of that campaign. And then you have your delay period. So the delay period is how long after this lead gets assigned to this campaign is this text message going to go out. So let's just put it at 3 minutes, for example. So that's that. Then you're going to add your next one. So let's just pretend it's an email. And then again, this is where, let's just see. There we go. So let's pretend it was this email here that I put together that I wanted to put in here. Again, you can choose who that comes from. So if you guys have multiple team members, maybe you have a mortgage agent on staff and anything mortgage related, that user that's assigned to the lead would actually be sending out the mortgage emails in that campaign. Again, the stopping clause on the emails, and then the delay period. So the delay period is always after the previous action. So how long after this SMS goes out will this email go out? So let's say we want this to go out to 2 days after that one, hypothetically. So then it shows there. You can always go back and edit and tweak it 100%. And then you just keep building it out that way. You can do it for tasks in there. I don't recommend putting tasks in there. You're just going to have a whole bunch of overdue tasks. I'll promise you that. The only way that I would do a task campaign would be as if it's specifically a task campaign. So it's more of like an action plan for you, that you put somebody on a, new listing action plan, which has a whole bunch of tasks it creates for you as to all the things that you need to do. But on general, with a lead, having a task to follow up with them, that's what your filters are for. Because again, you'll just end up with a whole bunch of overdue tasks. So going in here, and again, you can just go back into your third one here. You can pick your template, that sort of thing. Again, picking your delay period, whatever it may be. Maybe it's 6 weeks. You can build this out to go as long as you want to. So it's really great in that sense of thing. So kind of going back and just kind of giving a little bit of insight on it and how these things work. So why I tend to leave this open is because I would rather put my stopping clauses on these individual actions instead. And the reason being is maybe I don't want this SMS to go out, but I want the rest of the campaign to still go, because, some of it's maybe me trying to get a hold of them, but some of it might be educational in, to some respect. But also, if you're running a campaign, and let's say, and I kind of use this as an example, let's pretend this was an email that I had going out and it was for my leads and it was about pre-approval. Now, I can make it so that this email actually skips on a lead where I've indicated that they've been pre-approved with a tag. So this is where your tags also become beneficial. So if you use your tag pre-approval, I don't know where it is. So we know that they've been pre-approved. What would happen is it would actually just skip over this action and continue with the rest of the campaign, because somebody that has a tag that they've been pre-approved does not need to receive an email from you about the importance of their pre-approval, right? So that's the benefit in here, where you can put those stopping clauses on individual actions or silent hours on individual actions, because you may not care so much if your emails are going out at a later time during the day, but you're definitely going to care if people are going to care if their phone's dinging with messages if they don't put their phone on, do not disturb at night, right? They're going to get a little upset with you, some of them. Now, you can automatically assign a campaign as well. So this is for leads entering your system. If you are on the automated system, the automated platform, you can automatically assign campaigns, whether those leads that come in are coming from a branded website or the unbranded. So with the unbranded or the lead gen site, if you only have one, then you'd obviously only have one source, but you can have multiple sources. So some of you may be creating sources because you're running Facebook campaigns, so you can have specific campaigns associated with ads that you're running, things like that. So in here, you could select the source. So let's just pretend anyone that came in off of just the branded website in this case, they would get assigned to this campaign. Or maybe anyone that came on the branded site, regardless of what page they signed up on, they would get added to this campaign. So you could do it that way. You can do it so that it's the source and the lead type. You typically don't need to, but it just depends on what exactly you're trying to achieve. But many of you guys, when your leads come in, they'll come in as a home seller or a home buyer or another lead, unless you're creating additional lead types. And then you'll have tags as well. So this would only work if you guys are running Facebook campaigns. Okay, so because the automatic assignment is at the time of entry into the CRM system, not after they've been in the system. So I can't add a tag yet. I've been told we're working on it. I just don't know the ETA, but I can't add a tag to someone that's already in my system today and this automatically assign. Okay, so it'd be at the entry into your system that this campaign the tagging would work. So the only way currently where that's kind of in effect is if you're zapping them in through Zapier and indicating a tag being added that way, or if you're running a Facebook campaign and you have the Facebook integration and you're indicating a specific tag goes on to those leads when they're coming into the system. So that's the only way the tags work. So most of you will be using either sources or lead type. If you're doing any kind of automatic assignment in there. So that is really it on the campaigns side of things and kind of building those out, but do look through some templates. I will also send you guys, let me just see if I can find it. I am just going to, can I just share this whole thing? No. No, because it's in documents, but I'll share you. I know I've shared it in the past with you guys as well, is just some campaigns. I've only still got the 4 in there. I have been super busy, can't add anymore, but if you guys have anything that you would want to contribute to a campaign or to a type of campaign, essentially, if you have campaigns that are working or even documentation or email, things that you would generally send somebody if they're a first-time buyer, for example, or a tenant or what have you, then I can, kind of collaborate and put them together. But let me just put this in the chat here. So this one here is, some of you guys may have already had it, but this is just a few different campaigns that you can use or build out in the system. So a lot of it's just copying, pasting, because all the content is all there, but you can definitely tweak it, of course, as well. So hopefully that helps everyone out. And before we go here, does anyone have any questions that I could have answered for you before we go? Nope, we're all good. Perfect. You guys are all stars. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to look in your systems. I'm just teasing. I'm not going to. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or need any help with your filters, most of you will have an assigned trainer that can help you with those, or at least check and double check to make sure that it was set up properly. I always encourage you guys to try to do things yourself and just kind of ask, did I do it right? Right? Because you're going to get way more benefit over learning how to do something rather than somebody doing it for you all the time. You'll start to see the advantages and things will start to come together for you. But thanks everyone for watching today, and we will see you all again next week. Everyone have a fantastic week or weekend. Perfect. Thanks everyone.